Oh, we are recording. Okay. Awesome. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Saturday Morning Mastermind. I'm your host, Samantha Studebaker Carl, and I'm here with my good friend Catherine and Marjorie, and we are about ready to discuss verse 69 of the Tao Te Ching as interpreted in Wayne Dyer's book, Change Your Thoughts, Change Your Life, Living the Wisdom of the Tao, and we're on chapter 69. And this week's topic is living without enemies. So, but before we get started, I want to give everybody an opportunity to introduce themselves. And for those of you who are watching this as a recording, click the link below this video to get in our Facebook group, and you can participate with us as well. So, with that, go ahead and intro yourselves, ladies.
Good morning. This is Catherine from Boulder, Colorado. Looking forward to today's verse.
And good morning, it's Marjorie. Glad to be here today with you all, and looking forward to our discussion. It's always been awesome. Thank you.
Cool. Glad to have you on again, Marjorie and Catherine. And oh, you started the screen sharing. Awesome. Okay, so we're going to read the verse. And I love this picture for this particular verse when we're talking about living without enemies. I found the little kitty and the pit bull puppy. I thought that was perfect. Okay, so who wants to read it? Want me to just read it? Okay. Okay, so Tao Te Ching Verse 69. There is a saying among soldiers, I dare not make the first move, but would rather play the guest. I dare not advance an inch, but would rather withdraw a foot. This is called going forward without advancing, pushing back without using weapons. There is no greater misfortune than feeling I have an enemy. For when I and enemy exist together, there is no room left for my treasure. Thus, when two opponents meet, the one without an enemy will surely triumph. When armies are evenly matched, the one with compassion wins. Awesome. So what do you guys think? What are your first thoughts that came up after you read this verse?
Oops. I was going to say that at first when I read this, I was like, I don't think I can even really relate. It was a little bit kind of like, what is there for me to grab from this verse? But overall, when I finished reading it, I was thinking back that we're talking about, I guess, not having an ego, which is really important in life. And basically, yes, it is better in life not to have enemies. And I think once you either think of yourself as being an enemy with someone or declaring someone to be an enemy with you, that gets into the whole emotions thing, which in our previous meetings we've had other verses where we talked about people having an intention or a purpose, but not putting more into it than that. So that's what I was taking out of it, that I've had situations where there have been people that I didn't get along with as well as I would like, and I engaged purposely not to like fall into any emotional stance where I could get into a mode where I would think of them as some kind of enemy. I mean, I think you can think of an enemy at different levels. It could be just someone you just don't care for, not like someone who's really going to harm you in some serious physical way. And so there's many opportunities in life to, as you interact with people, to not engage to that level. So that's pretty much what I was getting out of it just from my first quick read. Thank you.
That's great. And I love that picture too. The little kitty next to the pit bull. They're good dogs. People shouldn't discriminate against that breed. But I thought, the very first verse, I thought, isn't that true? Like, wouldn't a soldier rather sit down at the dinner table with someone than to have to be engaged in a war. You know, wouldn't they rather be over in another country being the guest at a dinner table and having a conversation with somebody from across the world rather than being there to kill them or kill other people? And I think it was the third part of it where it talks about moving an inch, and that made me think of you guys have probably seen the movie 300 with the Spartans and how they do their shields and they move together and they move back together, like they're always together when they move. And that's what that made me think about, and how sometimes they would give a little bit to actually sort of like when you're playing tug of war. Do you guys remember that game as a kid? You had the rope and everybody's trying to pull everybody over through the mud or whatever. Sometimes you can give a little bit just to like get better traction so that you can really go further. So that's, it's an interesting verse, especially on this weekend with it being Mother's Day this weekend and the Mother's Day proclamation that I think I shared last week. I put it over on the page. How Mother's Day was originally about trying to stop war and to bring peace. So it reminded me of that as well, because the verses always seem to be so in tune with whatever's actually happening, regardless of when we read them, which is kind of freaky.
It's weird how that happens, right? There's so many things we could talk about, with this verse. And, when I first read it, I was reminded of a situation I'm having at work. And of course, this tends to happen. You read the verse and it relates to something that's going on in your life. And, I have this one, not my direct manager, but a manager in our store who ends up being manager of everybody at certain times of the day. They take turns, and that's the person in charge for that, for the afternoon or whatever. And she just rubs me the wrong way, and it's the silliest things, it's like, I don't have anything against this woman, but for whatever reason, the way that she manages just aggravates me. And I didn't even think about it. I was just like, every time I hear her voice, my rough comes up, and I get this, I don't know, this kind of weird, just like conflict feelings, and I wasn't even thinking about it. It was just happening. I wasn't really trying to analyze it or anything like that. And then I read this verse, and it's like, there's no greater misfortune than feeling I have an enemy, and there isn't. It's a horrible feeling when somebody is getting under your skin and you just don't even know why, but for whatever reason they are. And, and it says, when I and enemy exist together, there is no room for my treasure. And that completely was relating to what was happening with me, is that, for whatever reason, I'm aggravated by this other person. It's not like they're an enemy and I want to go kill them or anything like that, but they're just annoying, right? Every now and then we come across people who just rub us the wrong way, and it is just really frustrating, and you feel like it's an impossible situation, right? But then when I read this verse, I'm like, oh, okay, here I am with this part. It says, when two opponents meet, the one without an enemy will surely triumph, and the one with compassion wins. So, after I read the verse, I'm like, okay, well, I need to really kind of think about how I want to feel in this situation, because it's all me. She may not have any feelings at all towards me. I may just, be another person in the company. But for whatever reason, I'm the one that's got the issue because I'm the one that's getting my dander up and I'm the one that's getting frustrated inside. And so when I started to kind of look at the things that she was doing that I was having an issue with, then I can kind of have compassion per se and be like, okay, this has absolutely nothing to do with me. Why am I getting upset about it? And so, and I started kind of looking at the situation in that way and diffusing these ideas that I have in my head, all just then it started to dissipate, and then I didn't feel so much frustration or angst towards her. And then also another side of it, we read that book, What to Say When You Talk to Yourself by Shad Helmstetter. And this book, it just amazes me how simple it is to change the way you feel by just changing the things that you say to yourself. Because when I started examining what I was doing that was causing me to have these issues, at first she would do something and what would pop into my head and be like, God, why is she doing that? Right? And so that would be the first thing that I would say. And then I would say something else to myself to the effect of like, oh, that is so annoying, or I hate that chick, or something, or she's just, argh. And those are all these things I'm saying to myself. So now instead of saying those things whenever she does whatever she does, I'm just like, oh, that was interesting. Or I'm like, she's got an interesting way of managing people, or, and even if I don't agree with what she's saying, it helps me to change my attitude about it. It's just changing what I'm saying to myself. And then just realizing that I'm creating an enemy for no good reason. And that was part of it too. So that was the first things that came up for me.
Isn't that interesting how things trigger us sometimes? And what's even more interesting to me is, figuring out what is it? Like, why is that triggering me? What is it about that situation? Like, I have to figure it out. Then I become an investigator. I got triggered this week and I knew exactly why I was triggered, because I had an experience on a phone with a telemarketer that really let me feel something that I had done to somebody else. And I know I had done it to him because he was, thank God, open enough in communication to tell me that that the way I was, like, he understood I was trying to move him. He's just one of those people that you can't get into action. And it's just part of like that green personality color, like planning and planning and planning, but not really doing. And so I was trying to push him in a sarcastic way. And sometimes, through text on the computer too, people can't, words can be misinterpreted and taken different ways. And I think sometimes I was really joking and he didn't realize I was joking, and, things like that. But anyway, he let me know that my style of management did not sit well with him at all, and it was good. Like, I was glad that he pointed that out to me, but I didn't quite get the lesson. Like, I had to get it through the telemarketer on the phone to really feel it in, and it triggered me because I realized, shit, I did that to that guy, right? Now I know what that feels like. Yeah, so when you look at, when you have those reactions to people, I just find it fascinating to like dig in there and figure out why is that triggering me? I think about all the people that never even wonder why something is upsetting them. They just are upset and they're just going to get more upset, more upset, more upset, without like figuring out that it's actually them that's causing the upsettedness and not the other person.
I was thinking about that last sentence, when armies are evenly matched, the one with compassion wins. And I was thinking about that to me, that meant that the army that is on a higher plane, like the one with compassion, that no matter what happens, the one with the compassion wins, because that army has the heart or the wisdom, to me, the compassion, to think in a bigger picture way, so that it's not necessarily going to be who wins, as if winning is everything. Of course you want to win, but I guess even if you lose, I mean, hopefully not to the death, but if you do lose, I guess I was thinking the one with the compassion wins, because they can put it in perspective. They can have that bigger picture view of, well, they can see from all different perspectives, and in that sense still win even if they lose. So that's just something I was like, I had a situation, where, well, I don't want to get too specific, but I could put myself in the other person's shoes and realize by doing that I could I could learn a lot. I could learn a lot about how I was coming across, or what was happening and why. So it wasn't just me having things happen to me, but I could understand the dynamics, and I could understand where the other person was coming from, because that person has a role to play or a responsibility, and I'm just like a fact. It's not even maybe really personal for the person against me in any way, but just something that has to be done. So it's never easy, but I guess when you can have that level of understanding and looking at the situation, it helps a lot. It helped me a lot. Not that it made it feel any better. So I feel like, well, the last sentence, you always think that must be the really significant sentence there. They're trying to conclude something. So let's pay attention to that last sentence. Um, so, but I think it goes back to the idea of, like, I use the word ego, but I think also the idea of detachment, or, um, you want to do things with passion, but you also want to do it with a level I guess, pure intention, meaning, you kind of know what to do. And when you do it without a lot of like messy feelings and emotions that could actually kind of hinder you from doing it purely in the best way. That's what I was also taking from reading this verse, going forward without advancing, pushing back without using weapons, and not having that sense of having an enemy, but just the fact that I'm in this situation and I have to go through with it and deal with it, and in that way be stronger for it. So that's my sharing.
I love that. And it made me think of a lot of different situations in my life where, having that compassion for the other person and realizing, like Catherine was saying, not everybody examines what it is that gets them upset, right? And when we, as the person without an enemy, if you will, kind of can look at the other person in the situation and realize they probably don't even realize what they're doing and why they're doing it. They just have this automatic kind of whatever that's going on within them that they've never really worked on. And they, um, so if I can have compassion for that other person in the way of kind of looking at them in that kind of a light, then I can let go of my ego per se, or of my whatever's going on with me that's causing me to have a upset with them, and then that diffuses the situation. I mean, I don't know, I guess for instance, I can look back on my life and go, I could have handled the situation a whole lot differently. We had for a lot of years, my husband's mom was just really, really difficult to deal with, and but she was an alcoholic. She had a lot of anger issues, a lot of victim mentality, all of that, and a controlling person and aggressive and all those kinds of things. So she's a really difficult person to deal with in a lot of ways, and it created a lot of tension between us, particularly between her and my husband. And I guess if I look back on it now, I could say, okay, well, if we just took what she said and did as if she just didn't know any better, because she didn't, and treated the situation more, instead of getting mad and feeling anger and feeling frustration and I don't know, how can we combat that in a different situation? How can we go? And I don't know, when it's a sibling or it's somebody in your family, you tend to want to, I don't know, do something back to them, right? Or I don't know if it's necessarily that, or I don't even know with in that kind of a situation, but I can see how I would have been less upset and less frustrated if I had just allowed for her to be who she is, because she didn't know any better, kind of almost like a child. And not that you want to be condescending at all, but if you kind of can see other people who are lashing out almost like a child not knowing any better, then I feel like you have less, it kind of diffuses whatever feelings you're having so that you aren't lashing back out at them. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I kind of like the story that he shared in here. It was a sad story in this, in the chapter that Wayne was talking about, but he was talking about a man that had gone into an Amish schoolhouse and murdered several girls in the class. And let's see, it says that even though the members of the community grieved over the unspeakable horrors, they invited the family of the killer to mourn with them at the funeral, and they prayed for the killer together. And the Amish leader said, "We have no enemies. We are all God's children, and forgiveness is at the core of our Christian faith. If we can't forgive those who are lost and would do us harm, then our faith would be meaningless." And so, if we kind of think about that in the same way when we're dealing with it, maybe people that we have difficulties with, and instead of wanting to lash back out at them, is to have that compassion and realize, okay, they know not what they do, and we can I don't know, we can create the peace or the treasure. We can have that treasure within ourselves by creating that peace and not lashing back out at them when we recognize that they just don't realize what they're doing, and because, I mean, we don't even realize what we're doing half the time. It's not until we sit down and we really think about it that we can pause in the midst of it and realize that, okay, here's what I'm doing. I need to stop that, because it's only hurting me and it's only making the situation more difficult. And I think that's kind of one of the things that's trying to let us know is that, when you feel like you have an enemy, then that feeling inside of yourself is making your life uncomfortable. And obviously, if you're lashing back out at that other person, you're going to make their life more uncomfortable too. But at least if you don't lash out, then you're creating more peace in your own life. And when you identify what you're doing, then that can dissipate it, so you don't have the feeling or the need to lash out. And that creates more peace in your life as well.
Okay, wow, I'm feeling really emotional. I think it's because I started thinking about something Catherine had said a while back on one of our Saturday mornings about how inside everyone is still something beautiful and divine. Because that's what I was thinking about as you were talking, Samantha, about the situation in the schoolhouse where, yeah, every single one of us is really a divine being, and there's a good and There's good, good in us, no matter who or what, because there's that essence inside, and no matter what is going on outside. Because as you were talking about your family situation, I was thinking, yeah, for those who struggling with different things, different health issues or addictions, there's still a core of them that is still good, and you recognize that, and you give room for that. So I'm feeling really emotional, and I'm thinking, feeling like, oh wow, this is really washing over me, like and I guess even as you were talking, I was thinking about, life is really hard. I mean, it is hard because we're human. We're living in the third dimension, a third dimensional world, even though we're not third dimensional beings. And so I don't want to say it's hard, like we have to just accept it as is and not do anything, because I think it's hard because we struggle, because we don't like this level of life that we're living, and we want to be more, and maybe going back to the verse is the idea of, like, yeah, we want to live that beautiful life where no matter what happens, we're going to be on that higher level. We're not going to have enemies. We're not going to allow ourselves to have enemies. We're going to, be purposeful and thoughtful and have intention to live at a higher plane. That's the way I like to think of it as, and to remember, because I remember one of my spiritual teachers used the word being vigilant all the time. I was like, wow, that's really sounds strong. That sounds like, like, that's really, like when you live life that way, when you're always going to be vigilant like that. But I think it's being vigilant for good things too, because the word vigilant was used about looking for those opportunities that come along in life, or when the universe presents something, the good things, and I guess also the bad things can be an opportunity to be vigilant and to look for those situations as a learning thing, and to practice what this verse is trying to teach us. So anyway, I'm glad I'm not sobbing, because I can tend to sob. So thanks for striking that real emotional note in me. I was like, wow. I don't know if I have anything else to say at this moment, but it just really washed over me that maybe that's the essence of the verse, using those words like compassion and um, you know inching forward, and not just advancing recklessly. It's a lot of that is really being intentional and thoughtful, and like I say, vigilant. So thank you.
Thank you. I was looking for a book. I have this place to my right that is got all my stuff that is totally disorganized, but somewhat organized. But right now I can't find that book. I might have moved it to the bookshelf. But it's written by Matt Kahn, if you're not familiar with his work. It's called Love What Arises. It's a great book. If you go to YouTube, he's got a lot of YouTube videos up, and he's just funny. He's like, because you have all these spiritual gurus, I guess, and they each have like their own personality and their own little, twist on things. And I love different ones for different reasons, like I love Muji, and I love just the way that he looks at things. And then, Matt Kahn is like, they're just in different dimensions, both amazing gurus. And but Matt is funny. He just cracks me up. And I love his premise that everybody's really a 5-year-old. like our bodies grow up, but as far as when a lot of times those things that trigger us, if you trace that back, a lot of times it's like 5-year-old stuff, or like a 5-year-old attitude kind of way of responding. And it's so true. And I guess because I worked with babies for 20 years, there's no evil babies born, you guys. Like, they're all just, oh my God, they're all just so amazing. And so when I see someone acting out in a horrendous way, the first thing I think of is, my God, what has happened to them in this life? to cause them such pain that they would act that way. And that immediately takes me into a place of compassion. And there are real atrocities happening to people around the world, every minute. It's amazing, those of us that are sensitive to energy, it's amazing that we don't go crazy. And I think probably a lot of people that think they're crazy are probably empaths that just don't know how to deal with all this other energy that they're picking up on. It's difficult to, we feel like, many of us feel like, and we are, as a planet, moving forward, and energetically vibrations are rising, and sadly enough, people are either going to rise with it or they're not. And the ones that don't, it's not going to be pretty. But it's not pretty now. It's just when if you look around, I try to avoid the news, but sometimes I catch a headline or something, because Facebook is always putting shit over to the right that catches my eye, But if people are still, people still think, a lot of people still think that other people make them feel things. A lot of people really believe that you did this to me and that made me feel this, or that made me feel this, or why'd you make me, a lot of abusive people use that, why'd you make me do that? Nobody makes you do anything. Nobody makes you feel anything. That's all in your own little mind. And if you're empathic, you may be picking up on other people's minds. so that's something to consider. But there are people that, this is really fresh to me, because I recently did a Netflix binge. I had to I don't know if you guys ever do that, but I get so completely stressed out, and I just have to go do a Netflix, it's time to make popcorn and do a Netflix binge. And I've been watching The Last Kingdom, and it's a great show if you if you want to well, not if you don't like sword play. I love sword play, and I love the horses. I mean, there's all kinds of reasons I like shows like that, but it's really interesting because they have, it's about warring peoples. And at this one place, these two leaders come together, and they've got their people behind them, and they're all ready to go to battle, and the one steps forward and says, there's no reason for either of us to lose a man today. And what wisdom that is, and at the time the other leader conceded, and said, yes, let's not lose any men today, and obviously, when you come together like that, the one with compassion, the one that, like you said, Marjorie, that looks at the larger picture, is definitely the winner, because it sucks to have an enemy. And one of the most, I think, a situation that maybe a lot of people, real life situation people can relate to, is when you blend families, when you marry and there's children involved and exes involved and things. I've been in both situations. One where the other ex-spouse wanted to war, and one where the ex-spouse was willing to be a family around these children and support them, and let the children benefit from all of the extra love from the extra people, right? And God, it's such a huge difference, for everybody, right? If there's constantly warring and using the kids again, as weapons against each other, and it's just bullshit. And then to have families that come together that actually say, okay, you know, we all love these children. Let's raise them together. Gosh, it's so huge. I just, I think the children are realizing that there's no sides to the planet. I think the older people on the planet are going to have to drop off some more and let the new generation, you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's definitely some of the older folks. I hate to say it, but they're stuck in their ways and they need to let that go. But yeah, I agree. And I know we've kind of talked about these things before with if we just realize that, you know, we all are good at heart in one way or another, you know, we may not be taking the actions that we all agree with, but we all know we're coming from a good place. I mean, we don't all know that, but that's the way that I feel like we need to be looking at each other, is that we're all that. I don't know. Sometimes you can sit and you can say, yeah, I can see why that person did this or that. But when we really look down into the core, like, you know, for instance, my husband's mom, and I don't know what caused her so much pain in her life. I have absolutely no idea. All I can do, I mean, now I can look back on it and be like, you know, I realized that she had something going on that was causing her to lash out in the ways that she was, and to be the way that she was being, and to be an alcoholic, and all of those different things. And I can see that there, you know, obviously there was something. And if we could have only just realized that back when she was still with us, and had just kind of let it kind of blow over us, and just work our own. We could have had more to do with her if we could have just allowed her to do whatever she was going to do, and not gotten so frustrated with it, and just avoided her when she was being at her worst, you know, or whatever. I don't know. I mean, because when I look back at the big picture now, I can see a lot of things that she did that were very loving, but we just didn't feel it so much then, because she was so angry and so difficult. And, you know, it's just, it's sad. And I know that a lot of people have problems with folks in their family, and they don't know how to deal with it. They don't know how to um, get past those things, because there is so much butting heads going on. And you know, but I mean, it's like that in all in all relationships. You know, we look at our workplace relationships, and we can look at our families, and we can even look in our friend groups sometimes. And you know, there's always that instigator, right? Definitely you can see it on social media. You know, but I don't know. I think the more that we can just look past all of the difficulty, you know, all this crap that people do, and realize, okay, yeah, they're doing this thing for whatever reason. I don't know what it is, but I know that at least at the core, they're a good person. They're coming from someplace good. They just don't know how to do it. You know, just like a lot, you know, like you were talking about, you were using sarcasm when you're trying to work with this person. Obviously you have good intentions to try and motivate them or get them going in the right direction, whatever. And but they weren't responding to the sarcasm. And you know, we can kind of it's we can just kind of look at everything that someone else does and realize that, okay, they just don't know how to go about doing what they, you know, what they're trying to do. And I mean, we weren't taught these interpersonal communication skills in school. We weren't taught how to win friends and influence people in school. You know, I mean, we weren't taught those things. So we grew up learning from our parents who didn't know, and they learned from their parents who didn't know. And when we can recognize that nobody knew and nobody got taught how to get along with each other, and then, you know, those of us who are at least trying are setting the stage for the ones coming up next. And we can also set the example for the other people that we are in contact with on a daily basis, whether it's our coworkers or whatever, our family and friends, all of that. But I guess another thing that kind of came up with me, I mean, we've been talking about enemies as if all enemies are people, and sometimes our enemy isn't people, it's the events that happen in our lives. And we, so for instance, I know there's been, tornadoes and flooding and all kinds of things that have been going on in the world. And we create, excuse me, when something happens to us, we have the opportunity to choose how we're going to react to that. And we can react as if that thing that happened was horrible and the world is over for us, and we can be mad about it, and we can let that thing dictate how we feel. Or we can choose that we are still going to feel good and happy and positive and look for the things in that situation that are good. And rather than letting those things continually hurt us over a long period of time of all the difficulties that we had. It's like when we lived on the house at the river, we got flooded every so often. When we first moved down there, we didn't really know how to deal with the situation. We kind of did, but we kind of didn't. And so some of the flooding ended up really destroying a lot of the stuff that we had. And some of it was stuff that I had in storage, like old pictures and keepsakes and things like that. And when I was faced with that, I was given, the opportunity. I can be upset and I can be mad. I can be disappointed. I can be all of these things because I lost these items that were, important to me. Or I can look at it and go, okay, well, that's frustrating, but now I can remove all this extra stuff in my life that I didn't really need because it was just in boxes and storage. And it wasn't like I was looking at it every day. But we attach all these feelings to stuff. And so I could just let go of that stuff and realize I have all those memories inside of me, regardless of whether I have the stuff. And then I can look around me and see what a beautiful day it is. It's all sunshiny, and look how green everything is now that it's been flooded. And all this extra water, so everything's growing green and beautiful. And it's spring, and the sun is shining, and the birds are singing, and and that was the attitude that I went forward with. And so then I didn't have this continuous mumbo jumbo going on in my mind about how mad I was that we had to do all this cleaning, that I had to lose this stuff, that I had to deal with the insurance, that I had to, I could have been upset in all those different ways versus just, hey, this gave me an opportunity to clean out my lower level of the house. I don't know. I mean, we all have things. Well, and when I was working many years ago, gosh, it's been more years than I like to think it's been. But when I was working as a pet groomer, we had a fire at our salon, and luckily it was in the middle of the night. But I lost all of my tools, everything that I had. I lost my table, I lost my tools, lost everything. And I mean, that was my livelihood at the time. Now, luckily, the insurance covered the damage, but we did lose some days of income. It was like a week and a half of income that I lost. And, I could have been mad. I could have been like, and upset and all that. But instead I was like, I'm going to get some new stuff because the insurance is going to pay for new stuff and I get a week off. Yay. So, I mean, it's all in how you choose to look at it. Right. And that's what it is. And and I think that when we look at people in the same way, so now I need to kind of identify, okay, what positive thing can I see when I'm thinking about this other person at my work that was, getting my dander up? How can I look at that? What can I learn from her? What's she doing that is, okay, she does this stuff that I feel like is annoying, but why is what she doing is what is what is it about what she's doing that actually is beneficial? I can start looking for those things. I can look for the things that I do like about her, and then start thinking about that instead. You know, in any situation, we can do that. We can look for the positive versus focusing so much on the negative and letting it just eat away at us, because that's what it does. It just eats away at us and makes us less happy. So, okay, that's it for now. I'm going to refresh my coffee real quick. I'll be right back. I still hear you guys, though.
I was going to say that as we were all sharing, I was thinking about I happened to get a video, like a free video by Doreen Virtue. And I guess she used to do chakra clearing before she got into the angels thing. So I only listened to the one video. It shows how good I am at keeping up with this stuff. But it was really helpful because she talked about and I guess I'm not sure if this is a word she would use, but the idea of shielding, where someone wants to share something with you, maybe a friend or a family member, and it's going to be one of those intense conversations. And her advice was, rather than just sit there and listen to everything and then absorb everything that comes with the conversation, good and bad, and all the different emotions that person would have as they're sharing with you, that you could set, I guess, kind of like I use the word shield, I don't know if that's proper from her perspective, so that you only receive the love, like there's only love between you and the person. Whatever is being said to you, just being shared with you, somehow you receive only the love part of it, and then you give back the love part, because you're there caring and wanting to listen, but you don't really want to be like dragged through all the details of it. So I thought that was really great. I had never really, I'm sure it's not something we couldn't commonsensically come up for ourselves, but it was just really helpful. And it was, because there's so much of that going on. Like I was thinking about, relationships with family that you love, but same thing, you can't tolerate certain patterns of behavior and the same dynamics, because they say families, they have a dance. You just go through this dance, like, like you have these reels playing through, and you do the same thing over and over again. You say the same things, you act out the same, things, and so you don't want that. It gets really tedious. And then once you're ready, like, oh my goodness, I can't believe we're going through this again. So I was thinking that's a great way to approach it instead, is the love part, like maybe that sets like a whole aura around the family, around you and the other person. And so anyway, that just came to mind as we were all sharing here. And but it's just, there's so many things that we could be doing that would be so helpful, so many tools and resources, because that's why we're here on this Saturday Zoom, is looking for, kind of like a better way to be, by sharing here and looking at these verses, looking for wisdom. And I was thinking, it is so hard to translate all that beauty that we're looking for into our daily lives, our daily interactions. And there's so many ways that we know is possible, because we're all paying attention. We all care about it enough to look for those things like meditation, positive affirmations, on and on. And yet it's not that easy to apply any of it. It almost becomes like there's too many things that we could be doing. And we're not taught, young enough that we're now realizing we need to do that kind of thing. Like I know in the elementary schools, they're doing yoga, they're doing meditation, they're doing, mindset type approaches to helping the young children from early on. And I know parents, they're doing it at home, and we're all trying to do as much as we can, but we never feel we did enough, or we weren't good enough, or as parents, or, so in that sense, it's an interesting time that we live in, because we're also aware of these things, and we're all trying to like utilize them, like not just have the knowledge, but to practice them and to share them. But it's not that easy. And I guess that's why I focus on the spiritual, like, doing the prayer work for myself. Like, start with yourself. If you can't be that yourself, then there's no way you're going to role model or bring that energy that you want to bring to anybody else. So, And I'm trying to go back to the verse now, thinking, well, I think that's kind of what he's talking about, is that maybe if we all carried that energy around us, you know, knowing better than to just fall into easy patterns and getting into situations where we have enemies. You know, we don't want that, because as it says for when there is an I, and when I and enemy exist together, there is no room left for my treasure. And I think, you know, one of the things I'm focusing on, because it's what I'm getting from my spiritual searching, is eternal peace. That's all we're looking for. You know, we just want to go back to our real core divine being, eternal peace and infinite abundance. And instead we're getting down in the dirt with, you know, my enemy, or I'm an enemy, or you're my enemy, then we're not going to have that treasure. We're not going to have that eternal peace. We're not going to have that infinite abundance. So there's a lot of value in you know, I just saw something recent. I don't know where I even saw it. Something about ancient teachers are for ancient peoples, as if like we can't gain any wisdom from ancient teachers and ancient masters, or the master teachers. And I was thinking, well, I know that it's not easy just to pick up a classic, you know, that's meant to be helpful for us, and easily pick out what we need, just like us studying the verses. And so that may be more work, but there's still really real beauty in what the ancients and the master teachers have to share with us. So I appreciate having this verse. You know, but I told you when I first read it this morning, I can't even relate to this. Talking about soldiers and like making the first move, and you know, but anyway, thank you for listening.
I love that, you know, what you said about it, just because it's talking about soldiers and that sort of a situation, it doesn't mean that all enemies are necessarily like that. We make enemies out of things ourselves. But one of the things, well, of course, I had the, I think both of you know, and I've shared enough that enough people know that, you know, I had an out-of-body experience with Jesus during a situation where something was happening that I would have judged as being horrible, but it was explained that there's no judgment. And at 12 years old, that kind of freaked my mind out. But at the same time, you know, I do think that we come here to play certain parts so that we all learn and grow and expand. And so like with all of the Trump issue, you know, that whole situation going on right now, in other words, that's only happening because that makes that hits hard enough that people actually get into their hearts about things. You know what I mean? Like it compels, just like when an earthquake or a tornado happens, the angels arrive. You know, the helpers are there to assist. And so, but it takes that sometimes. Maybe that person has never helped another person in their life, and suddenly, you know, their neighbor's house gets hit by a tornado and they're over there giving them first aid or something. Maybe that's the first time in their life that they've ever stepped out of themselves to, you know, things happen to compel people to do certain things. And if you believe that we really are, and I believe that we are just these God spirits, whatever you want to call us, extensions of God. And if we're all just playing a part, then shouldn't we have even more gratitude for the poor souls? This is how I look at it, the poor souls that choose those most difficult assignments. Like, would you really think about it? Would you really want to be known, knowing that we're like these all-loving spirits? Would you really want to be known as, you know, the person that did the whatever massacre, or you know what I mean? It's sometimes I look at people and I think, oh my God, God bless you for taking that assignment, because I sure as hell wouldn't want it, you know. The other thing is, you know, if you believe in the whole hologram situation, then although we may call ourselves empaths, another way of looking at that is that thoughts are being planted into our minds, which some people act on and some people don't, thank God. But it is, thoughts are being thrown at us to cause reactions, to give beings more energy to feed off of, for lack of a better term. That there are, I guess we all sort of feed off of energies in a way, but there are people that, there are even people, humans, I'm sure you guys have run into them, that feed off of, they're the drama people, you know, they feed off of the energy of conflict. Like, not everybody wants to be in peace, you guys. We have to realize that, right? Some people really like feed off of that conflict energy and that drama and that fire, and there are people that say that there are other entities out there that intentionally cause shit here on earth to feed off of that conflict energy, you know. So there's so many different ways of looking at it. The thing that I have to you know, like I can't believe we're at the end of the hour already, but probably my last, you know, leaving thought for the day is that give people the benefit of the doubt. Always give people the benefit of the doubt. And I find this, and I've shared this before about my son. My son had a drug addiction, and you know, we've worked through that, and thank God, you know. But I have family members that, like right now, he's working really hard, trying to, you know, get on his feet and whatnot. Sometimes he needs a little help. I have family members that assume that he's only looking for money because he's back on drugs. Like, they just can't accept the fact that he actually is not on drugs. He's just having a hell of a hard time right now and needs a little bit of help, you know. But when you're dealing with people, you have to always give them the benefit of the doubt. If you do that, it just helps you not react in such an emotional way. Oftentimes, I think we get even more triggered and emotional if we feel like whatever the person is doing that's pissing us off, like they have control over that shit. You know what I mean? Like, sometimes people, you'll think that somebody's doing something and you take it personally, but it really is not personal. Like, if you give them the benefit of the doubt, it has nothing to do with you. I've heard both of you say that today. It had nothing to do with you, you know. It's their thing. It's their shtick that they're going through. And however it triggers you, that's your shtick. That's what you got to figure out, is why that's triggering you. And I know for me, because I'm a very strong, you know, independent, overly independent person, to the detriment of things, and I'm working on that. I automatically assume that, well, if they really wanted to change that behavior, they could. You know, if they really wanted to do that, they could, because nothing has ever stopped me from doing anything I ever wanted to. But not everybody is me, you know. and like, even sometimes I had like with the telemarketer thing, that I had some things come up like, wow, I really wish I'd had the presence of mind to respond in this way. And so I had sort of this trippy little loop going on in my head for about 15 minutes about how I could have responded. I wish I would have responded, all that. And sometimes I see people that just live in that loop. Thank God I was only in that loop for 15 minutes and I recognized what was going on, and, you know, I kind of stopped it. And I would like to think that everybody has the ability to do that, but they don't. Some people don't, they can't stop that loop. And how freaking crazy would that drive somebody? I mean, honestly, like, I am so glad, like, I'm so blessed that I have the ability to stop my mind from doing that, because not everybody does. But I think if you give people the benefit of the doubt in every situation, always assume there's a good intention behind. Well, you can't always assume it's hard to, if they're doing something you deem as evil, it's really hard to, you know, assume they're doing it for good. But it, like you said, if you assume that they can't help it, like they don't have control over that, like my mother-in-law from one of my marriages, she was just batshit crazy, you guys, and it was because she had been severely abused and, you know, like whipped until there were wounds and salt poured in the wounds and locked in the dark closet without food or anything for, you know, I mean, the woman had issues. And my ex could never detach emotionally from that. Like they were butting heads until the day she died. And for me, because she wasn't like my blood mom and hadn't put me through all that shit as a kid, you know, I didn't have all that to deal with. So I could look at her and say, oh my God, she's really mentally ill because of everything she's been through. And so I was always able to sit there and listen to her for 2.5 hours, tell me the same story, like every 5 minutes over and over, and scream at me like I was the person that did something to her. And I could sit there and take that because I knew she couldn't help it. I think when we give people the benefit of the doubt and we realize that some people can't help it, it takes the edge off of it. You know, it allows for the grace and the compassion. And the other thing, when I get really demanding, is I remind myself, you know, when I think about all the things, especially when it comes to the subject of forgiveness, when I think about all the things that, quote, God has forgiven me for, wow. I have no right not to forgive someone for something. So give them the benefit of the doubt and forgiveness. That's my ending words. And we're running a little late because we started a little late, and that's cool. Have a great Mother's Day, everybody.
Yes, I know. I was thinking I need to call my mom today. I don't like to call on Mother's Day. I'm a little bit like you, Catherine. What's the big deal about Mother's Day? We know it's commercial. But anyway, I was just going to say that just taking away all the things that were shared today, I just think, you know, I guess the best approach is to keep that love inside you, and you know, that's a good feeling, and the gratitude and the happiness and the joy, and and we're all here really to keep working on ourselves. That's the most important thing, and that's what the verses are doing, is to help us wake up. And so there was that simple 3 words about, well, how can you do that? Like, how can you stay awake and pay attention and be at that higher level and such. And I guess the thing that I like was just be nice. You know, just be nice, you know, like, so if you can try and just be nice when people are bothering you and irritating you, and things pop up in your mind that aren't really that great, you're like, well, just be nice. Like, just keep that as your focus, and things will be fine, because you'll be carrying that energy that's a better energy, you know, and a better magnet to bring better things to yourself. So anyway, thank you for letting me be here today. I appreciate it.
So wonderful having you both on here and sharing insights with you. I just love it because we get these different perspectives and help us, better understand what we're learning. And Catherine, when you're talking about Matt Kahn, I listened to one of his videos recently. I don't remember which one it was, but basically the premise was something along the lines of probably his book, that Love Will Arises thing. And he was talking about how you can, quit being so upset with yourself for the things that you're doing and instead praise yourself for being awesome at whatever it is that you are doing. So if you are being grumpy today, you want to change your attitude is just be like, you are rocking that grumpiness, man. You are being so good at being grumpy. You are the most awesome grumpy person today that there is, And I'm like, I love that because you cannot be grumpy if you're sitting there laughing at yourself for being grumpy, for being so awesome at being grumpy. And I think the same thing goes for if you look at other people, like you were just saying, Marjorie, you just be nice. What if we just start praising each other for being so awesome at whatever thing you're doing right now? So, like, I don't know, for instance, this manager, that I've been having an issue with is be like, she is just rocking that bossiness today. She is so awesome at being bossy. I just love how bossy she is, or whatever, I don't know. But we think about what is it that's irking us today? What annoying thing, like, oh man, this apartment complex, we have so many people that drive through here like it's a freaking racetrack, Okay, look at that guy. He is so good at going fast around that curve. He almost hit that goose. Dang, he's so good at almost hitting geese. I don't know. It seems so silly, but it can definitely change your attitude about how you're feeling. Change your frame of just the feelings. When we're praising people for whatever they're doing, you just feel good, right? So we may as well just take whatever everybody else is doing and just praise them for being so awesome at it, Even if it seems sarcastic, it still makes you feel good. So I don't know. That's how we keep our peace and have more treasure in our lives, right? I don't know. Anyway, guys, yeah, have an awesome, amazing Mother's Day, a great and a wonderful week as well. I think the weather is supposed to be good for most everybody this week. So we love you all, and thanks for joining us. And click the link below the video to jump over into our Facebook group so you can participate too. With that, we'll see you next week on the Saturday Morning Mastermind. Bye for now.